is show number 620.
Yes.
And we have a returning guest today, Mr. Jack Lindberg. He's going to talk about cybersecurity again and the importance of what's happening right now, especially with what just happened with T-Mobile just this past couple of weeks here, where there are 400,000 users got hacked and their information got compromised. So, but before we get to Jack, though, Ruth, what is happening in real estate?
Well, I'm going to hide you, and I'm going to hide Jack, and I'm going to talk about real estate for just a few minutes. We are down to 23 days of inventory. We listed 83 homes yesterday. We put 84 under contract, so that's an even Steven. And we closed 129 homes. And that gives us about 835 active homes under 400,000. And we've got approximately 20 homes that were just listed yesterday under 400,000. The $1 million homes are flying off the shelves, and we've got, so far this year, we have sold 1,019, and that's about 4.4 a day that are getting sold. Much different than last year's $1 million homes, where it was 1.7 per day. If we keep up with this current rate, by the end of the year, we will have sold 2.6 times the number of $1 million homes than we sold in 2020. So very different market we have today, with all the people, 130 moving into Vegas every day. That's about 5.4 an hour. And 45% of them are coming from California. And that, we're looking at one more week of sales. We're doing about 126 per day right now. We'll see how that ends up. Usually the last week, that number kicks up. So I am going to hide that, and I'm going to bring you back on, bring you back on. And I have one other little thing I want to say to everybody. The statewide unemployment rate dipped to 7.7%. And that's a tick down from 7.8 that it was in June. So July was 7.7. And last year, our unemployment was 16.6%. So that's quite an increase. We added 4,800 jobs last month, and we have recovered about 68% of the jobs lost during the recession. And the overall employment has grown to 92% of pre-recession peak. And the department said it's in its monthly jobless report, said that is some good news.
Yeah, that is good news.
Really good news. And the governor's really working hard with all these, with all the problems occurring, you know, with whether you're wearing a mask, whether you're not wearing a mask, whether you have to be vaccinated, whether you don't have to be vaccinated. And I'm a little confused. But one good thing in all of this, the resorts world has quite a prominent location, of course, on the Strip. And the Metropolitan Police Department's opening a kiosk on the Resorts World Las Vegas property to increase our presence on the Strip. And I think that's really good for us to do that. Now, I believe it's MGM has a kiosk, but it's not easily seen. And I forget how many policemen they've added now that we're getting so many tourists. And with the resort world, they anticipate the tourism to just continue to increase in our city. So that's all good. And let's see if you and Jack can, Jack, I think we're hearing an echo from you.
It's either that or nothing, apparently.
So we'll deal with it, I guess.
I don't know what to do. I plugged my headphone in. He said he couldn't hear me, so I went back to that original echoey thing. Hopefully it won't bother people too much.
You got it. Is there a way you can turn the volume down just a little bit?
Okay, let's see. Yeah, that's probably an idea. Oops. Oh, wait a minute. You just made me think of something. Well, no, the TV.
We have your volume coming out of the TV?
No, that's just it. It's not. So, yeah, doesn't make sense anyway.
Well, while you all figure that out, I am taking a designation class today, and it's 24 hours. I did 4 hours yesterday, 10 hours today, and 10 hours tomorrow for my new designation. And so I have got to say goodbye. If I'm 10 minutes late, I don't get any credit. So I just want to remind everybody, Jack, don't forget.
I have to know?
don't forget we have our class cybersecurity 10 to 1 on Monday, and it's now risk reduction. So you all have a wonderful show. I'm going to go get educated, and I'll see you next time.
All right. I don't think we're hearing echo.
Whatever you did,
Jack, worked. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay. Yeah, I just switched my weird. Okay. Maybe this extra TV monitor I have has a microphone I don't know about. Because I had the mic on my computer working, and the sound seemed like it was coming from the computer. But anyway, tech issues.
Perfect. That's normal these days, and that's why the need for cybersecurity is ever prevalent. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts because this week, obviously, I think it was this week or last week, but T-Mobile just got compromised. I think again for what they said the second or third time in the last decade.
Well, and I don't know why T-Mobile's getting picked on. I mean, anybody's hackable, and that's one of the points in the class is that. As much as we teach you how to make yourself better and safer, in the end, if you're a target, the best hackers can hack anybody. So the goal is, number one, don't make yourself a target. We talk about things like how you post on Facebook and how sometimes the way you say things or do things can make you a target. So, T-Mobile is just one more victim of, many that are out there. One of the unique things about the T-Mobile thing was that hack allowed to keep it in kind of simple terms, it allowed the ability for people to intercept the hackers to have the information they need to intercept you on a one of those two-step authentication things.
Right.
So in terms of password stuff and logging in techniques, when I first talked to the police officer that I talk about that works for Vegas Metro, when I first talked to him, I mentioned that, I teach two-step authentication. He's like, well, there's ways to hack that too. And I'm like, what? And he told me about how, people can basically spoof your phone or mirror your phone. And, if you're not paying attention, when the code comes through that they request, they can be in and out of your stuff in a hurry and you wouldn't even know until it's too late. So we don't want to rely too much on that kind of stuff. I mean, secure passwords are definitely number one. So anybody who's with T-Mobile, step number one is you want to change passwords on any account that has the same. Well, in T-Mobile, I think you probably log in with your phone number, not your email. But if you have an email associated with that account and a password, well, some of us are guilty of using the same password on other websites.
Right.
So you want to go to any website that has that email and change the password. Because the criminal's first thought is going to be, we have this email and this password. Let's try it on Amazon. Let's try it on, Bank of America, whatever. So, best thing to do is to change your passwords with any site that's associated with the same email that T-Mobile had. And then you want to lock your credit. And a lot of these, or actually all the bureaus, Experian, I probably put that right in here, but Experian has a little app right there. Oops, let's see, right there. TransUnion and Equifax, they all have the ability to at least get on the website. I use the Experian app all the time, but you can go in there and lock your credit. Just lock it temporarily, and just to make sure that somebody doesn't get in there and hack you or steal your identity.
Right, or apply for more accounts or things like that.
Yeah, it's funny because I was looking at cell phones recently, and I just upgraded from an iPhone 6 to an 11. Big jump.
That's a huge jump, Jack.
Yeah. And well, I went through this weird phase in my tech career where I'm an Apple guy. My computer's an Apple. I've got two Apple computers here. I've got the iPad, whatever. But I've had Apple since the 80s, and the iPhone 5 came out, and I had every iPhone up to the iPhone 5, and it was really buggy. It was really a problem. And at that point, I had just gotten onto Gmail and got comfortable with Gmail and Google Docs and some of the new things that Google was coming out with. So I thought, well, it makes more sense to have an Android because I'll be better mobile. And right. I'm traveling and teaching all the time anyway. So I switched to Android, and I stayed on Android until about 2019. When doing my research for this class, it really became apparent to me how much data Google is getting on us with everything that they do. And again, something I talk about in the class briefly, and I cover in the SciPro designation that we'll talk about that the class is part of. In the second class that's online, part of the designation, I cover in depth the kind of information that Google and Facebook both get. Facebook started the game, and Google came around and invented a bunch of stuff to keep up. Facebook had all our profile information that we volunteered to them. CIA would have loved it back in the 50s.
All right.
So Google had to catch up with that information to compete for the advertisers. So they invented Gmail and Google Docs and Android and Google Chrome and all these things that they could use to track everything else we were doing that they didn't have that Facebook did. So it's all for them. It's all about the game. And with Apple, their business model isn't their business model is not advertisers. It's products. So they're not as likely
is inclined
to abuse that
Correct.
data to make money.
Right. No, interesting. Good morning, Karen. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're just talking about cybersecurity today. And actually, one of the things I wanted to revisit with you, Jack, was, obviously this show is about social media marketing and marketing in general for real estate. And with the prevalence now of everybody going online, using Facebook, using Google to advertise, what are some of the pitfalls? I know you talked about it before that open you up for attack, from a hacker to pay attention to you as a real estate agent marketing, maybe real estate online.
Advertising you have a cash buyer.
I
see on a regular basis.
Right.
Somebody
elaborate on that for us a little bit.
$650,000 looking in this neighborhood, and as a criminal, all I would have to do is go to the search box at the top of Facebook, type in cash buyer, and I can find all the posts that say cash buyer, and then I can start pursuing those people. Facebook's an amazing marketing tool, and they have a reach unlike anyone else. I was just talking the other day about how the Taliban were asked about what's going to happen now that the whole Afghanistan thing changed over. They were asking the Taliban, one of these Taliban guys, hey, what's going to happen to women's rights now? And he said, you talk about rights? How about if you tell me a little bit about what's happening to freedom of speech, and why don't you ask Facebook? The Taliban said that, which kind of gives you an idea of the reach of Facebook, right? Everybody knows Facebook. The Taliban, I know they have a Twitter account, so social media is out there. So it's a great tool for exposure, but you have to be careful because everyone's on it. Everyone knows kind of the basics about it, and you have a lot of information that you have either intentionally or unintentionally. And so there's ways, and we teach some methods like Facebook lists. If you don't have your friends in lists, you might want to just get back out of Facebook. It's a serious issue in terms of how you control your daily posts and things. Now, your Facebook page is a different world. That's a separate world from your personal world, and so that's a different thing that you don't have to worry as much about security. So if you're on Facebook and you're just doing the page thing, you're not really worried too much about your personal profile, you're a little safer than most. But a lot of people like to get in their personal profile and answer those cool quizzes about the top 20 places you've been in life, and all of these little things add up to
data collection. Right.
Yeah, I mean, remember that story about Target where the dad found out about his 16-year-old daughter was pregnant from Target because of her purchasing habits changed, and their algorithms figured it out and started sending your advertisements in with the bill, the Target card for baby carriages and stuff like that. And dad's like, what are they doing? They're crazy. And then he found out after he pursued them, she fessed up, and it was all because they knew because of the big data. They knew just because she changed some of her buying habits, like from scented lotion to unscented lotion. And there were several changes that the algorithms went, hey, wait a minute, we might be dealing with a pregnant person here. Let's advertise appropriately. And that's how accurate they can be. It's crazy. It's really weird.
So in the class that you have with Ruth here with the training center, I mean, what are some of the things that you teach that prevent people from getting their information compromised or their clients, more importantly, their clients' information compromised, because that's what can cause a lot of headache and can be costly for the agent?
No doubt. Costly in the sense that, let's see, I have one here. I have a picture of an article here where an agent was sued and the broker was sued because the agent forwarded an email from a criminal to their buyer and the buyer wired money based on that email,
Wow.
$190,000. The courts found they were 85% responsible, so they were responsible for $167,000 because of an email. So, there's many techniques that criminals use. The number one thing we're going to talk about, first thing we cover, is better passwords. And I guarantee you, if you haven't been in my class and you're not part of the other 1% out there, your passwords aren't good enough. I can guarantee you, I put money on it. It's like one of those safe bets in Vegas. Most people, and it's not anybody's fault. You go to the average website and they say, oh yeah, 8 characters with a number, letter, symbol. And you think, well, if I do the math here, we're talking billions of combinations. Yeah, that's good. And you put in your 8-character password. But the criminals nowadays, they've got computers that just at billions of possibilities per second. And they've got algorithms that break these passwords down in a matter of seconds. So like in the T-Mobile case, they hack the database and then they the passwords are encrypted on every database out there now. But they can sit there and take their time once they hack a database and break down these what we call hashes to a point where, okay, we've got that password for that hash. And over the years, that's been done so much that now there's these lists online where you can get lists of hacked passwords already out there. And you know how we are. We have a password, and when it's time to change it, we just change like one letter or 2 letters or a number.
Right.
Maybe change the exclamation point to a question mark, So it's not hard for the criminals to see those little habits and put those in their algorithms and, again, figure us out.
Right. So what is the recommendation? I mean, I'm probably, guilty of that very thing where, if I change my password, it's going to be like 2 letters, a capital here and there. I can't. Where do you keep complicated passwords? One, right, so that you don't just end up just locking yourself out of everything. I can understand. We talked about this too. You shouldn't have pass phrases or paraphrases for passwords because those are much more easily hackable.
It depends on what you mean by that. But when you're saying paraphrases, like you don't want to type out a whole sentence as a password. In fact, there was a time a couple of years ago where some experts were teaching that length was the only issue. Mm-hmm. And so really what all they were addressing was what you call a brute force attack. And we talk about the different attacks in class and how they're different and how it's evolved. But in a brute force attack, it's purely about the length of the password. So imagine a brick wall trying to stop a train. The faster the train's going, the thicker the brick wall has to be. So in terms of the criminals, the faster their computers can compute, the longer your password has to be to stop them, right? So the idea of the password being long isn't the only issue anymore, though, because, again, the hackers have figured out. In fact, the guy that originally came up with the idea, his name is Bill Burr. He came up with the idea of the 8 characters, number, letter, symbol thing. He came up with that partly because programmers, and the way they design websites, they use certain symbols and numbers and things in the code on the back end. And so it was really difficult to enter something into a web page with the same characters they're using as programming, because sometimes it would interfere with the programming. So they had to adjust. So Bill Burr came out with this way where they could compromise and have, here's some symbols you can use and not interfere with, the programming of the page. A colon means something, that kind of stuff. Parentheses means things. So he said, okay, this was 20 years ago, though. He said 8 characters, number, letter, symbol. In 2017, he came out and said, my bad. I forgot that people are predictable and that they're going to do things to try to remember their passwords. So when I said 8 characters, number, letter, symbol, I meant random. And everybody's going and they're writing passwords like, their dog Fluffy, and they're changing the U to a 3, and they're putting an exclamation point at the end or whatever. They're doing things predictable. You replace a name with an @ sign or a 3 with an E or whatever. And so the criminals figured that out, created algorithms that would exchange those little common things that we do to make our passwords more difficult. And it made it less difficult for them. because they could predict these things. And so he came out and said, my bad, we just forget it. Just go to long, random, gobbledygook passwords and get a password manager.
Right. What about, if you have an Apple computer, they do like the self-generated key passwords, which is like 12 letters cryptic. It's all random. I mean, do you suggest using any of those? But then you're storing it on Apple's network too.
Well, yeah, you're storing it in the keychain. So so it's in your browser, like it's connected to your browser. And really, ultimately, it's only protected by the password of your device or devices. Yeah. So if your devices don't have a safe password, anyone that knows Apple will know how to get in and go look for those passwords under keychain. So that's not the best way either. So we're going to talk about that in the class. We're going to talk about the best way to deal with passwords. And ultimately, the result of what we teach you will make your life easier because you'll be able to handle long, unique passwords for all 150 sites you have out there and apps and all that stuff, but with ease. And that's the whole point. That's why we're teaching the class, is because we're trying to give you better solutions, but make it easier as well. We understand. I mean, I was a realtor and a broker for 13 years, so that's part of why I teach the class, is because I understand that perspective. I know what it's like to be out there hustling for sales and doing that stuff. So the average realtor doesn't have time to figure out all this techie garbage. So we're going to make it easy for you.
All right. So password's number one. What's number two?
Oh, you got to quit using your Gmail. Oh, and people hate hearing that. Or Yahoo, or MSN, or Hotmail, or any of those other free email services. Because criminals basically can spoof those addresses. And we're going to show you an example where people literally lost out tens of thousands of dollars because the criminal copied the agent's Gmail exactly, but for one letter, and then tricked the client into thinking it was the agent telling them to wire their money somewhere else. And even though, as an agent, you don't have anything to do with the wiring process, and you've told your clients that, I still hear stories where the clients get an email from the agent saying, no, wire your money over here, and they do it anyway. Even though you've told them, you've had them sign the LVR, additional addendum with the contract that warns them about wire fraud or blah, 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 they still do stupid stuff. So it's just better not to have that option. So we're going to talk about what you can do to evolve from your Gmail life. Let's put it that way.
Okay. All right. I mean, that's tough for a lot of people to do, right? Because a lot of people have now, stored all their bank accounts, their other parts of information that they use their Gmail account, and it's hard to transition a Gmail away from Gmail. Yeah.
Again, when in 2010, when I switched from the iPhone 5 to Android, I was all about Gmail and Google. And then a couple of years ago, I said, I'm un-Gmailing myself. I realized, I got to be the example first. But so I did. And I because I was using Gmail for everything and Google Docs. And I mean, I was good friends. I'm good friends with a guy who teaches mobile computing through Google. And so I learned all kinds of amazing tricks and things that Google does. And it does some amazing stuff. And it's okay to use their systems and their, Google Docs, all that stuff. If you don't mind them spying on you in a generic sense. I mean, they're not literally saying, this is Jack Lindbergh and here's his email. We're going to read it and see what he said to so-and-so. No, it's just they're keyword searching, and they're just using their algorithms to try to better predict how to advertise to you, which in the end isn't the worst thing in the world. I like getting advertisements that mean something to me.
Sure.
Sometimes they'll send me an advertisement. I'm like, I didn't even know that existed, that product or that service. Let me check that out. I've actually discovered products because of the good advertising. So
absolutely,
in that sense, it's not a horrible thing. But in our real estate careers, you have to be careful because, again, your clients can get tricked into wiring money in the wrong place, or if you do get hacked, or the other thing that's really crazy is agents sending their offers back and forth via Gmail. Gmail's not a secure system. Right. So what are we doing? So I'm trying to talk to some people at the board or whatever about some solutions where instead of emailing offers to each other, we log into a secure system and then exchange them that way.
All right,
It could
like
be at a board
upload.
level or
Yeah,
something.
exactly, at a board level. That actually would probably work because then everybody's forced to use this centralized system that now has a
They do it with MLS anyway, right? So yeah,
correct.
you log in, type in the MLS number of the listing you want to submit the offer to, comes up, you see the agent's name, you submit it to the agent, you can communicate at that point. Yeah, I got it. Oh wait, I need this addendum, whatever. So it's certainly
Yeah.
possible. And I've talked to one of the directors of the board about
Mhm.
this. So we just need to present it to the right people there and see if they want to do that. There's other ways too, like some of the transaction management systems could easily just, I mean, they already have the stuff uploaded. They could probably figure out a way if other people are a member of the same system to just exchange it. But in the end, we just have to stop emailing this stuff. It's ridiculous because that leads to the third thing we talk about, which is secure Wi-Fi and sending of stuff. If you're sending unencrypted email through Wi-Fi, criminals can intercept that stuff in the air. And so we talk about how you can protect yourself and methods you can use to guard your information from criminals intercepting it in the air and taking off with it. So that's another subject we cover.
Mhm. So you don't suggest logging onto the Starbucks Wi-Fi to work
Well,
and start sending
you know
secure emails
we teach you that
and
you
such.
can do it if you do it the right way, and we show you the right way. There's a way to to go into a Starbucks Wi-Fi guarded, and you're covered. So in that sense, sometimes you have to, and that's the other part of, again, my practical real estate angle on this is that some people will just tell you, oh, just use your hotspot, and that's within your phone. It's private, so there's no one. I mean, who knows? There's probably a way to hack that if somebody wanted to figure that out. Everything's hackable,
Right.
but way less likely to hack your personal hotspot. But what if you go to a Starbucks, you don't have your charger, and your battery's dying, and you need to get online and send an email, So what's your solution then? So we teach you how to, be able to use, your laptop at a Starbucks and still do it safely. And again, another point of the class that we cover that whoever's listening should, if you don't know how to do that, you got to come to the class and learn these techniques, because you'll be, immensely safer than you were before.
Yeah. Well, part of one of it is using a VPN of some sort, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. That's part of it. That's, there's several steps you take, but that's definitely one of them.
Mm. There's so many out there right now. I mean, I see advertisements constantly, especially on YouTube, on some of the channels that I watch on these VPNs. How do you know which one's legit and which ones are, some random?
I've used several of them. Same with password managers. There's a bunch of them out there, and I've tried and used different ones. And with password managers, the mains, you've got ones like LastPass or NordVPN, NordPass. There's different ones like that are out there, and you can find them. Typically, what I like to do is kind of a check is if they're in the Apple App Store, they've been vetted to some degree, and it's somewhat true with the Google store as well, but Apple really kind of vets their providers, if you will. Okay. So that's step one, is that you think, okay, if they're in the Apple store somewhere, then then I know. But if you don't have an Apple, you wouldn't know that, right? So the other thing to do is to get online and look for reviews. Mm-hmm. Just Google best password manager or best VPNs. And then you'll see articles from, Wired magazine or some credible source where they'll tell you these are the best ones. And, depending on the features, you might not pick their best one, but at least, if they're writing about it, then they're legit, right? And you're okay with that part. And then your next part is, putting it in place, which, my argument is both a password manager and a VPN, neither one costs more than $3 a month. So it's really cheap. Great tool to have. And if you end up in front of the division because a client lost money through wire transfer fraud or some other issue, you got hacked, or you're in front of the court and you're in front of a judge, and like this court case that ruled the agent was 85% responsible. If it were me and that had happened to my client, I'd go in and show them all the tools I have, show them everything I have, and say, I'm doing everything I can, Your Honor. I've got all these tools. I still got hacked. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to do. And I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have held me responsible, or that agent in this case, because
Right.
those are things you're doing to make an effort to try not to be hackable. And this agent didn't do anything. They were pretty careless about the whole deal. And honestly, it's scary to think that the majority of the industry is relatively careless. I liken it to leaving a pile of cash on the front seat of your car and locking the car, expecting no one's going to break the window to get the cash.
Right. No, I mean, it's until recently, I guess, until people like you are starting to raise the flag, until lawsuits start coming out and, agents start getting penalized for their carelessness and seeing the real effects of this. I mean, that's why people are paying a little bit more attention, but you're absolutely right though. I mean, I don't know if security is that big of a focus. I mean, the financial services industry is like a huge focus. How is the board treating security? Are they requiring, taking these classes as part of, getting licensed so that, they can protect themselves here? Or is that still in the works? Have you got any headway with that?
Oh, you open it up so I can brag about myself a little bit. I came to one of the commissioners that I know, and I showed him, this was back in 2018, I showed him the outline for this class and explained why this was so important. And I talked to him about California, because California is a bellwether state. It's such a big state with so many people that usually things happen there first. So I saw some issues in California and said, you know what, this can happen anywhere. So I wrote this class based on trying to protect agents from things like wire transfer fraud, et cetera. Took it to one of the commissioners and said, hey, I heard there's some new hours that are going to be required. Is there any way you can make this one of the requirements in the new expanded hours for licensing? He said, you know what, that's a good idea. So he took it to the commission. And he took it to the board first. The board's like, okay, whatever. They didn't seem to really recognize the value of the content, but the commission did. And so they're the ones that actually said, okay, we're going to have this risk reduction category, and we're going to make this cybersecurity one of those fulfillment things, one of those things that satisfies that requirement. So you're now required to have 3 hours of risk management or risk reduction, and this class satisfies that new requirement. So up until now, the best we could do, that same commissioner went to the division and said, hey, I want this class ethics until we can get this new thing, because at least then, with an ethics designation, there is an ethical issue here, because there's a statute in NRS 645 and there's a NAR standards of practice that both talk about how agents have a responsibility to protect their clients and their clients' information and stuff. So it's required ethically. So it made sense we could make it ethics. So we made it ethics until we could get this new category. And then now the new category is in place. So now we're risk reduction. And again, it took me a year of commission meetings, and I brought in a detective from Las Vegas Metro who works the cybercrime unit, who had a lot of great insights. And when I brought him in at one of the commission meetings, and that really impacted them when they talked to him directly and said, hey, what's going on out there in the real world? He said, real estate's 90% of my job, people. Can you help me out here?
Right.
So they took that seriously as well.
No doubt. I'm surprised, because in the real estate transaction, there's so much personal information being passed back and forth together, and money, big money. We're talking, if it was a few $100s or something, it'd be no big deal. But we're talking people's life savings, being exchanged here. So I don't know. It is surprising that they haven't taken that serious, but I'm glad they are, because it's going to help the consumer most importantly, right, to protect their data, but eventually, real estate agents, if they're not careful, they're going to get dinged real bad. I mean, this is career ending. It could be career ending.
It is. Absolutely. And you know what? I just had a brainstorm. I should get this movie clip and play it in the class, but the end of Silence of the Lambs, for anyone who's seen that movie, and most people have, where she's in that blacked out room, feeling around, having no idea the guy's right behind her, right? And she gets lucky and shoots him at the end. But at one point, this crazy creep guy he's darking out the room, and he's got those special glasses that see in the
night
dark.
Vision.
So he can see her, and he's got his hand like right there, and she has no idea. And that's how it is in the real estate industry, the criminals are right there, and they can do so many things, and most real estate people just don't have any idea.
Right.
And at the board level, they don't, they're not any techier than anybody else. They've got an IT guy that does his thing, but usually they specialize in IT. They don't know the specifics of real estate per se. They hear about things here and there, but you really don't know about the ins and outs of a transaction until you've done one. And that's the hard part. That's why I say, this is one of the reasons I'm teaching the class, because I've been in that world. And so I can see all the little caveats along the way to say, oh, wait, no, this is what a realtor would do, but we don't want them to do it this way anymore. Let's tell them to do it this way instead. So that's a big part of it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's scary out there. I mean, but I'm glad things are coming around in this industry. I know the mortgage side has done a better job of getting on board much faster, because they actually deal with the Social Security numbers and stuff like that when they do the application. But the real estate transaction and the real estate agent still has a whole bunch of information. So it's good to see the industry moving in the right direction there.
Well, it's due a little bit to how everything's set up. It started with the title companies. Criminals figure out if you hack the title company database, you've got all the information about the transaction on both sides. Boom, you're done. Let's hack everybody now. So it started there, but the title companies are companies that are organized and they have employees, and the CEO says, "Hey, employees, do this or get fired," kind of thing. And of course, they're going to comply, and they supply their people with their devices. And so the IT people make sure the devices are clear and clean on a regular basis, blah, blah, blah. So the title companies did this, so much so that I taught this class at a title company recently, and I couldn't download some files because their whole system was so shut down and secure that we didn't get those right permissions in time to download certain files I wanted to download. I was coming from the wrong area or something. And when I looked to see where their network here in Vegas was coming from, it was coming from Minneapolis. So everything they're doing here in Vegas is actually funneling through Minneapolis and then back out to the world. Minneapolis is where they're headquartered.
Sure.
So my point was, what was I talking about here? I just lost my thought.
Centralized security.
The title companies and mortgage companies. So then mortgage companies started getting hit because, like you said, their social security numbers, financial information. So again, as companies, they got together and they said, okay, let's, we're only giving out certain laptops to certain reps, and they can't do any personal stuff on their business computers and all that. So they took care of their end. So who does that leave in the real estate transaction? For the criminals, brokers and agents. And we're such a fragmented industry. There's no, NAR says, hey, don't do this. Nobody's paying attention. Even when the board puts out notices, a lot of times people just don't pay attention.
Yeah.
It's not unless you can get to the broker level that you can really start getting the agents to hear the message. And so that's one of the challenges. And that's why we keep teaching this class like we do, because we need to get the word out to every single member of the board here and every single licensee in the state. They need to know these things, because what we teach in this class will make you significantly safer. And if you do end up getting hacked, it'll give you a heck of an argument in front of the commissioner or in front of a court of law that you were doing your best. You learned these techniques and you were doing these things and you still got hacked. What else do you want me to do?
Right.
So it's good information either way.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're running almost the core of the hour here, or 3/4 of the hour here, Jack. I mean, any last kind of bits of information that can help the real estate community just stay a little bit more secure and keep their clients' information and their own personal information kind of secure and safe?
Well, I mean, it's all about good habits, and one of the challenges we have as just human beings is that we're always looking to expedite things, right? We're looking for the easier way to do things, and it's human nature.
It's instinctive.
But as licensees, you've signed up and pledged to be responsible in this area, and so there are extra steps that you're going to have to take now to do your job. Just like anything else, you get a brand new iPhone. It takes time to learn how to use these things, these apps, and how do I download this and where do I find that and all that kind of stuff. How do I change the settings on this? It takes time, and it's the same thing. We have to invest the time in cybersecurity methods and learn how to use them, like a password manager. It takes time to install it, and then it's got to learn all your passwords along the way. But in general, in a relative sense, it's pretty easy to do. You just have to commit to it. And the same with like a VPN. And a VPN doesn't work everywhere. For example, you want to watch a movie on Amazon. Amazon will say, "Hey, you're using a VPN. You're going to turn that off, or we can't stream."
Right.
Because the
Right.
VPN blocks your identity, and they
Right.
need to know you're a paying customer, right? So these habits that we have, we need to have that VPN on by default, and have to turn it off when it's interfering with something we want to do, and we have to have that password everywhere, the password manager everywhere. So these are things that we have to do to to continue the career in this world of technology that we have. That's the challenge, is that we're using all this technology, and most of us, I mean, I'll admit, I don't know half the stuff that's going on in the background of the technology. I mean, it just a couple of years ago, I learned just how much data Google was mining from all of the things that I was using, their Gmail and their Google Docs and everything. It's like, whoa, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this. So, number one, I went in and figured out what they were doing and decided which of their products I wanted to use and which ones I didn't. And I didn't need to use Gmail, so I decided to get out of Gmail. I still have it, but I don't use it. And then the other was just, what do I do in terms of like all of my data? Because we store it places too, right? So we have to figure out, well, where are we storing this stuff? I mean, we all understand the idea of, if you have files in an office, physical paper files, you have to lock the file. You have to limit who has access to that locked file. That's actually state law. That's part of, I think, any kind of a profession, dentists, doctors, any of those professions
Sure.
are required to protect the documents like that. But we don't look at it that way with the technology. We don't see it the same way, and yet there's more access to more stuff via the technology. And so if you're a nerd and you see the world like the end of Matrix with you, he sees all numbers on the walls and stuff.
Right.
Some people see the technology, second nature wise, and they see things we would never think of. And so we have to be careful, because again, there's things we're using and doing that we just have no idea all the things they're doing. And so you have to think twice about the information you have about your clients. I mean, your clients are number one. We talk about how one of the requirements of a real estate agent is to put their clients first. So if you're using Gmail because it's comfortable, but it's potentially going to harm your clients, that's not a good enough reason. You need to quit doing it. So,
right. Yeah, live up to that fiduciary standard and responsibility as a real estate agent, which you do have.
Well, what's interesting? I kind of studied this a little bit more, but I had a conversation with a guy that a highly respected educator, been around forever here in Vegas. And we were talking about agency, and I was one of the pioneers of buyer brokerage. Back in the early 90s, I was signing buyer brokerage agreements and getting retainer fees. And so and my uncle was a judge. So I was able to sit down with my uncle and talk about the ins and outs of this process, and also being one of the first people doing it. And so I felt comfortable taking the chance, because again, I had a judge giving me advice. But in the end, we're the whole. I'm trying to think of how to word it. The whole Nevada representation thing isn't quite the same as other states. This person was telling me that agency doesn't exist here like it does in other places, and you won't find fiduciary in any of the real estate law anywhere. The word fiduciary. He said we took it away from what he calls common law. And so we have a different way we still have to represent our clients here in Nevada in a responsible way and all that stuff. But like dual agency, I was talking about dual agency. And he said, no, we don't have dual agency here. It doesn't exist, because that's not how it works here. We changed the laws so that you can't do that. It's not possible because of the way we operate. So you said fiduciary, kind of triggered me in that sense that Nevada law, he said, doesn't have the word in there. So I've got to go research.
Interesting. Yeah, that research, that would be great.
I respect this guy. He knows a lot. He's been teaching for years. He's been in this market for years. So I believe him. And in fact, I wanted to sit down with the commissioner that I know and say, well, okay, you explain this to me. Because I still think dual agency, when an agent represents both a buyer and a seller, in a transaction, when a single agent represents two parties, I don't think that makes any sense whatsoever.
Zero sense.
Obviously, anybody who's doing a double-ended deal right now will say, "Forget you." But
right.
In the end, I think it hurts the industry, because I think it cheapens the view of the public of us. And we've already got that threat out there now of Zillow and OfferPad and all these different companies trying to take over our business and say that realtors don't have enough value. Why would you use them? You can just use our technology. And that's not true, but we're not emphasizing the areas of value that we really have. A lot of us are still depending on technology to sell us when it's the technology that's killing us. So my argument's always been, realtors have 3 points of value. You have your time, which can't be replaced. So whatever time you're taking on a client's deal that they would have to do themselves, you're replacing that. You have your expertise, which is where agents need to work the hardest. Get more expertise. Mm-hmm. In fact, I tell agents to specialize if they can. And then number 3 is your non-emotional perspective. That's huge in a real estate deal. So those 3 things you'll always have available. You'll always have that to sell, no matter what technology does. And I think agents are going to need to learn how to sell those aspects better in the future.
Absolutely.
That's really where their value is.
That's where their value is. Absolutely. Well, Jack, appreciate you coming back on the show today. To sign up for the class here, I believe it is this Monday, August 23rd from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., the cybersecurity class. And if you want to sign up, go to bee.vegas. There should be a banner going below the screen here that talks about how to sign up and the times and dates and the location. And also there's Zoom is available for the class as well. So Jack, appreciate you come back on, and everybody else, have a great week and tune in on Monday morning at 9 a.m. for Ruth and her show.
Thanks everyone. See you Monday, hopefully.
All right, Jack, take care, man.